Hey Sojourning Scholars, it's Chuki here from SojourningScholar.com, and in today's video we're going to be talking about how to transition from the F1 visa to the H1b visa. Now this video is particularly for international students who are F1 visa holders. That's not to say that if you're a J1 visa holder you cannot get an H1b, but it's just that as a J1 visa holder your transition to the H1b will be a lot different from someone who has an F1 visa. So make sure to stick around until the end of this video because I'm going to be giving you guys a lot of considerations that you should keep in mind when thinking of transitioning from the F1 visa to the H1b visa. There's going to be a lot of good tips here, so trust me guys, you don't want to skip any part of this video. Now if you like this video and you would like to get tips like this in the future, consider joining our email list at SojourningsChollar.com. For a disclaimer, the content in this video is given for informational purposes only and should not be considered as legal advice. If you require personalized legal advice, I highly recommend you seek the counseling of a licensed attorney. So now let's start with the basics of the H1b visa. The first thing about the H1b visa you should know is that this is called an employer-sponsored visa, and that means that unlike your F1 visa, you cannot apply for the H1b visa by yourself. Only a US-based employer can apply for the H1b on your behalf. Now the H1b visa, unlike your F1 student visa, allows you to live and work in the US for up to 6 years. Apart from the H1b work visa, there are other temporary work visas that you might be eligible for, such as the E1, the O1, and the TN work visas. Now I've made a video discussing the different temporary work visas that you can get to live and work in the US. I'll leave a link to that video in the description section below. But generally the H1b visa tends to be the most common type of work visas that many non-immigrants choose to use to live and work in the US on a temporary basis. Now, if you've heard of the H1b visa, it tends to be associated as a lottery-based visa, which means that you can only get the visa after you've been picked in the lottery. But that's not the only way of getting the H1b visa. You see, there are two ways you can get the H1b visa. One way is called a cap subject H1b visa that's limited to 85,000 visas every year. Now, that's the class of the H1b visa that you can get only after getting picked in the lottery. The other class of H1b visa is called an H1b cap exempt visa. Now this cap exempt visa is typically given to non-profit organizations such as US universities and US research labs. And with the cap exempt H1b visa, you need not go through a lottery system to get it. Now one thing to note about the H1b visa as an F1 visa student is that in order for you to get the H1b visa, the job for which your employer is sponsoring your visa needs to require at least a bachelor's degree. So this makes the H1b visa perfect for international students who are already in the US and seeking to change their status from an F1 visa to the H1b visa without leaving the US. Now, if you've ever been to a career fair in the US, you've probably run across companies that say things like, "We do not sponsor for the H1b visas." For some of these companies, there's no point wasting your time with these companies, okay? Some companies have policies where they're never going to hire anyone who is not at least a permanent resident of the US, particularly because they have certain government restrictions in the industry that requires them to only hire people who have a green card or people who are US citizens. And then you have some other companies that don't want to hire foreign nationals such as international students because from their perspective, they don't want to go through the cost prohibitive nature of the H1b visa process just to hire an employee when they wouldn't have to do the same if the person was a US citizen or a green card holder. So if you're really serious about getting an H1b visa to live and work in the US after you're done with your F1 status, there's no point wasting your time looking for jobs with these kind of companies. Now, when it comes to filing the H1b, a logical question you could have is how much does it cost for the H1b filing process? Now, typically, the cost of filing an H1b visa on the part of your employer could be anywhere between $4,000 to about $8,000, excluding the cost of attorney fees. So if it's not already obvious, one of the keys to getting the H1b visa is making sure that you can find a job with the US employer who's H1b friendly. Because one of the mistakes you don't want to make is to get a job with a company when you have the intention of getting an H1b visa, and then when you request that they file for your H1b visa, they tell you that they don't sponsor H1b visas. Now I'm going to be making a video in the future ranking different industries by how H1b friendly they are, so make sure to stay tuned to this channel. Now if you're going the route of getting the cap subject H1b visa, you need to keep in line the timeline you have to getting the H1b visa while you're still on an F1 visa status. Now, the reason for this is that your chances of getting the H1b visa through the lottery system is never guaranteed. As an example, in the H1b lottery selection system of 2021, your odds of getting the H1b was just about 31%. So what this means for you is that if you're going to be working with a company that plans to file an H1b cap subject petition for you, then you have a limited number of times that the company could try to file for your H1b while you're still on your optional practical training period. Now, this will become very important if you're an F1 visa student who is not eligible to get the STEM OPT. So if you're an F1 visa student who's working for the employer on your OPT, you only have one chance to get the H1b visa with that employer. And on the other hand, if you're an F1 visa student who's eligible for STEM OPT, then you have at least 3 times to secure the H1b visa while you're working on your OPT and STEM OPT. Now, something else to consider is your graduation date and when your OPT ends. For example, if you're an F1 visa student who's going to be graduating in the fall semester, which is in December, this would mean that you're going to be ending your first year of post-completion OPT 14 months from December, which brings you to February, 2 years from the year you graduate. And on the other hand, if you're a spring semester graduate who finishes in May, then this would mean that your first full year of post-completion OPT is going to be ending in the month of July, the following year after you graduate. Now, something else that's important to note about the cap subject H1b visa is that the lottery system happens in late March of every calendar year. And it's only after you've been selected in the lottery system that your employer could then file an H1b petition on your behalf. And so if you're an F1 visa student who only has one chance to get the H1b visa during your OPT, then it's very important that your employer files for your H1b visa within the first few months of you working on your post-completion OPT. And on the other hand, if you're a spring graduate who's going to start your post-completion OPT after the month of May, then this means that you already would have missed the window of opportunity that opened in March shortly before you graduated. And so your only chance of getting the H1b visa is going to be in the next year, shortly before your OPT ends. Now, something else to keep in mind as a spring graduate is that if you've already received an offer months before you graduate in May, you can ask your employer to file an H1b petition for you before you graduate. This way, instead of having only one chance to get the H1b the next year after you graduate, you can have 2 chances of getting the H1b. Now, one advantage you have as a spring graduate who finishes in May over a fall graduate who finishes in December is that you could be eligible to get the cap gap extension if you were selected in the H1b lottery and your employer filed an H1b petition on your behalf before your OPT expired. Now, I'm not going to go into much detail about the cap gap extension in this video. If you'd like to learn more, you can find a link in the description section below. So these are some considerations that you want to keep in mind if you're going to be transitioning from an F1 visa to an H1b visa. Now, for many F1 visa students who are trying to transition from the F1 visa to the H1b visa, the fact that you have a 31% chance of getting selected in the H1b lottery is very worrisome. A lottery-based selection system is one thing that's totally out of your control, and the best way to navigate this transition is to always be optimistic, but making sure that you have a plan B. Now, I hope you found this video very insightful. You can comment down below if you have any questions. Thank you for watching this video, and as always, be unbounded.